It seems that actually Chick-fil-A has a completely different structure of franchising. Could you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's definitely different. The founder, Truett Cathy, he started the first restaurant back during the Depression. So he's always felt like he wanted the opportunity to be a business owner, to be open to a lot of different people, regardless of financial commitment up front. So it's very little front end commitment, and then basically you're splitting net profits with the corporate entity as well. So yeah, it's a very different model than what you'll find with most franchises.
So what you're saying is that you don't need a big money to be a franchisee of Chick-fil-A.
No. It's the hardest part is actually getting selected, because I've been an owner for just over a year, and the year that I applied there were 30,000 applicants, and they took on 70 new owners. So that's the hard part. Financially, it's actually very little upfront investment.
So what was the parameters that they were looking into to select their franchisees?
Well, I know a lot of it has to do with your leadership, your management experience and background, and then being very service and values-based company. They wanted people who really wanted to impact the local community and give back and be involved in the day-to-day operation as well. So it's, they're not looking for a franchise owner who just is more of a silent owner. Their kind of recipe for success is having a meaningful brand with a local owner who's going to be there day to day and get to know the customers and get to know the team, which is part of what appealed to me too, is I like to get my hands dirty and be there in it.
And when you wanted to apply, you just filled in the form, and then they interviewed you. So how many times and how long did it take?
Yeah, it's a pretty rigorous process. So I just went to the Chick-Fil-A.com website, and there's a career section and franchise information in there, and you do what's called an application of interest. So that's kind of your first high-level application, and then they contact you whether or not they want to move forward. And I was lucky enough to move forward to a video interview first, just on my PC at home, and then from there were a series of interviews from that point forward. And it took me a year to get through the process, and that's actually about half the time of the average. So, I was pretty lucky in that as well.
So you said that there were 30,000 people applied, and it took for you 1 year, sometimes 2 years, so that the final people are selected. And
correct.
Did you have something like a discovery day or something like that?
Yeah, so there were a couple things. First, I spent a lot of time in a local Chick-fil-A, so really learning, if it's something I'd want to do.
Did they ask you to do that, or you did it yourself?
Not, but I felt like it was important. I think now in the process they actually do include that. So once you get to a certain point, they require that you do that, so that you know what it's like to do the day-to-day operations. And then I did go to the Atlanta corporate office. That was actually for my final interview, and my husband went with me because they want the spouse to know that what are the challenges and the ups and downs of being a franchise owner. And before that, we were lucky enough that there's a corporate office here in Irvine, so I was interviewing primarily there.
Okay. And so after you signed a contract, because they are actually doing the investment, how do you select the territory, and what is that process?
Sure. So I actually inherited this location, so it was already here. A different owner had moved to Texas to start a new Chick-fil-A. So my situation's a little bit different than if it's a grand opening and somebody's starting a new one. But Chick-fil-A corporately decides the locations and the time frame of starting all their franchises. So even when I'm applying, I can tell them where I'm interested, but I don't have a say in where that restaurant's going to be built. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but what if they didn't have any location near you, or do you have kind of choices from the beginning, or?
Then you would wait until a location until they told you now we're building nearby, or they would ask if you're expanding the area that you're interested in. So they really control that pretty tightly.
So in case, in your case, you're saying that actually this store was working beforehand.
Correct. Yeah. And I interviewed for 3 different locations. So my family and I lived in Thousand Oaks. We interviewed for a grand opening store there, and I wasn't accepted for that. And then I interviewed for another one in Orange County, and I wasn't accepted. And this was the 3rd one. So it was a combination of where I was open to going, and then what they were looking for, what the need was. So
I think that it's kind of completely different than
It is.
what other franchises do.